There we go. Any questions? Well, grooviness has been achieved, and thank you all for coming. Oh. All right. Let's talk to our Elohim, and we'll take a look at Parsha Yitro. Father, we thank you for this time together. We ask that you will open our eyes, open our hearts, open our understanding, Father, so that we can see, hear, and understand what your word says. We thank you in the name of Yahushua. Amen. So, Parsha Yitro. Yitro, we've translated it as Jethro, whose last name is Bodine. All right. Yeah, but Shemot 18:1 through 23. We're not going to do all of that, so, but that's the Torah portion. So we're going to take a look first at Shemot 18:1, which is the first verse in this Torah portion. Then we're going to look at, we're going to read through. We're not going to expound on 10 verses, 13 through 23. And then we're going to consider what that means for us as kahila. Now, kahila is a word that means community, congregation, a group of like-minded believers. And Yitro gives us a glimpse into where we should be. So let's take a look. So this Torah portion gives us much insight into the function of the kahila, the community of believers. And we're going to consider some of the verses in the Torah portion, beginning with the first verse of the Torah portion in Shemot 18:1. Wow, I think I just said all that. Anyway, it says, "Now Jethro, the Cohen of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that Elohim had done for Moses and for Israel his people, how that Yahuwah had brought Israel out of Egypt." All right, so here we get an introduction. So let's break it into pieces. Let's take a look at the phrase, "Now Jethro, the Cohen of Midian, Moses' father-in-law." Let's take that into consideration first. So we have the first word, which is vayashema, that from the root shema means to perceive, discern, understand, obey, apply, and be content. Then we have the name Yitro, that means abundance, and comes from a root yathar, that means, among other things, to have more than enough. He's known as the Cohen of Midian, which we also have to take into account. Cohen, what is a Cohen? We translate it as priest, and we get this, you know, I don't know what we think of as a priest, somebody who goes around slaughtering animals and doing that kind of thing. But a Cohen is also a word that means a teacher, a minister, someone who is there for the benefit of the people. All right? So, with that, we come to this next word, the name Midian, that means strife and contention. Well, it's not much ministering and teaching that goes along with strife and contention, so we have to go a little deeper. We could stop there and consider that Yitro is simply full of excess strife and contention, but we don't read that way in the Torah. We read about a man who is actually has some wisdom, and he offers Moses some very good advice. In this Torah portion, first he offers him the advice about getting some help, but he also offers Moses advice about his responsibility in keeping his children and his wife with him and not abandoning them, you know. And so that's something else maybe for another day, but Yitro is not someone who's full of strife and contention. So we have to go a little deeper to the word dayin, that means capable of judging and ministering. Okay. So now Jethro, if he is the Cohen of Midian, if he is in that position to teach and to minister, he has to be someone who's capable of judging and ministering. But there's more to that. So we have this root of dian, that is Adon, that means master, but not necessarily a master of men. It also refers to someone who has control, not necessarily of others, but of himself. So Yitro has to be someone who is well grounded, has control of their emotions, and is able and capable of dealing effectively with teaching and aiding and ministering and loving other people. So let's go back to that. We'll come back to that idea in a minute. First, we have to consider the words Moses' father-in-law. We can consider that Moses was tasked with the leading of people and giving them counsel concerning their lives within the observance of the Torah of Yahuwah Elohim. Okay? So, in a sense, we can consider Moses to hold the role of pastor, shepherd, whatever you want to call him. Okay? He's the guy that leads the people. He's the guy that sits there and listens to everybody come in and tell them everything that he really doesn't want to hear, or that other people don't want to hear. Okay? So we can consider him to hold the position of pastor, not only rabbi. Rabbi is simply a teacher, and in the Jewish world, the rabbi kind of holds the same position as the pastor. He's a teacher and someone who ministers to the people of the Kehillah. Okay? So we have to consider the word for father-in-law, though, to begin to understand the significance contained in this verse. And the word that's used for father-in-law in this case is choten, that aside from a word referring to an in-law, is also a word that means that something that holds affinity, in other words, a similarity to something in a very personal way. So, let's put all of those definitions and ideas together into a cohesive statement. In Yitro, we can consider someone who is, first of all, capable of perception, discernment, understanding, obedience, application, and perhaps most importantly, contentment. This is a person who has an abundance of these things, or at least a combination of these things. Not necessarily all of them. You can have a combination of one or two. The Yitro personality, we'll call it the Yitro personality, is capable of both teaching and ministering, and as opposed to entering into strife or contention, he is capable, or she is capable, of mastering themselves in order to lead others successfully. Okay? It's a leader that doesn't get involved in arguing. He listens, and he's able to afford, or he's able to provide input that the other person is willing to listen to without arguing. Okay? He or she is capable of mastering themselves in order to lead others successfully. So the Yitro personality is similar to the Moses personality, and as such is someone who is capable of effectively ministering to the Kehillah. Alright? So, don't necessarily have to have a pastor figure or a rabbi figure, although those are scriptural things. Yes, we're going to take a look at some of the stuff that Paul had to say down the road. But we have to consider that there are others within the congregation who are capable of carrying out this role in an assistance format. So the next three segments of this verse give us some insight into the knowledge held by the Yitro personality. First, he heard of all that Elohim had done for Moses, which would give us an idea of someone who is familiar with the Torah and its use in a leadership role. Okay? He's heard everything that Elohim did for Moses. Right now, he's familiar with everything that's happened up to the plagues of Egypt and the expulsion from Egypt. Second, and for Israel, his people, he or she is knowledgeable on how the Torah affects the Kehillah, the congregation of Yahuwah. Third, how that Yahuwah had brought Israel out of Egypt, so he's familiar with the truth concerning Yahuwah Elohim's plan of redemption for the Kehillah. Again, we have to link the first word of this verse, Shema, to all three of these, in that in all three cases, the Yitro personality must again be able to perceive, discern, understand how the Torah applies not only to the children of Israel, the Kehillah, but also how it applies to his or herself. Okay? They say what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Okay? Kind of like what our Constitution is supposed to be, that no member of Congress will get any special anything. They have to be the same as the people. The Torah says that this is the way it is. Okay? Just because you're the pastor or the teacher or the evangelist or anything else does not put you above or below anyone else in the Kehillah. And we'll talk about that some more in a minute, but let's consider the application of all this in verses 13 through 23. Okay. And it came to pass on the following morning that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood about Moses from the morning to the evening. Poor Moses. And when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did to the people, he said, "What is this thing that you do to the people? Why do you sit with a whole bunch of other helpers helping you out and helping you usher these people in and taking names and making sure that everything gets lined?" Oh, wait a minute. Sorry, wrong book. Why do you sit by yourself and all the people stand around you from morning to evening? And they're probably not all standing quietly. They're probably all yelling at the top of their lungs, wanting to be heard. Okay? And Moses said to his father-in-law, "Because the people come to me and inquire of Elohim." Is there a problem with that? Moses says, it's because the people come to me to inquire of Elohim. Why aren't the people inquiring of Elohim for themselves? But anyway, when they have a matter, it comes to me, and I judge between a man and his neighbor, and I make them know the statutes of Elohim and his Torah. And Moses' father-in-law said to him, no, that's not what he said. "The thing that you do is not good. You will surely wear away, both you and this people that is with you, for the thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to perform it yourself alone. Hearken." The word is Shema. Perceive, discern, understand what I'm about to tell you. "I will give you counsel, and Elohim be with you. You be for the people before Elohim, and you bring the causes to Elohim." 20. "And you will teach them the statutes of the Torah, and I will will show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work that they must do." Okay, so Moses, in that pastoral, rabbinical role, is to teach the people. He's to teach the people what? The statutes and the Torah. Okay, we have the Torah, and then we have all those funny little statutes like don't eat the pulled pork sandwich, and don't mix your clothes, and a bunch of other stuff. If your wife cheats on her, make some dust from the ground with some water and give it to her, and if she's telling the truth, then she'll be okay. Otherwise, her hip will shrink and her stomach will... Anyway. He's telling Moses, okay, you have that leadership role. You're in the position that you have to teach the congregation. Okay? But he also tells her, "Moreover, you will provide out of all the people able men, such as fear Elohim, men of truth, hating unjust gain, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, rulers of 10. Well, that's kind of a chauvinistic thing, to only use men to place them over these things, so we'll address that in a minute. "And let them judge the people at all seasons, And it shall be that every great matter they shall bring unto you, but every small matter they shall judge themselves. So shall they make it easier for you to bear the burden with you. If you shall do this thing, and Elohim commands you so, then you shall be able to endure, and all this people also shall go to their place in peace. All right. So Yitro has some very good advice for Moses if we take this from a topical point of view. Saying, dude, you're wearing yourself out. By the time you get home, the meal that Zipporah has slaved over and trying to keep warm for you is cold. She's had to put the kids to sleep. She's rigged out, stressed out, and all this other stuff. If you do this, you can get home a little earlier and maybe eat a hot meal. But let's take all of that into consideration. What we have to take into account first and foremost is that there is not a pastor or rabbi that can take on all the roles required for the kahila. No single person can take on all the roles of overseeing a congregation by themselves. If they do, then we're going to talk about that in a second, but let's go on. As Yitro says to Moses in verse 18, you will surely wear away both you and this people that is with you. It's not only going to affect the person who tries to be Superman, but it's going to affect the people that he tries to be Superman too. There's no such thing as a one-man show in a congregation. If it is the case, it will cause the kahila and its pastor, rabbi, to fall apart. Verse 21 gives us an insight to consider that there must be a number of people that are able and ready to assist in the spiritual needs of the kahila. So let's go back to the idea we developed earlier in the Yitro personality. It's not necessarily a master of men, but it's someone who has control, not necessarily of others, but of himself. So the pastor has to have control over himself as well as be able to lead the congregation. He has to be semi-politically correct in an unpolitically correct kind of way sometimes. But again, this pastor, this rabbi cannot do it all by themselves. Okay, so first of all, whoever has to have control of their own emotions and all this other stuff. Someone who, as stated in verse 21, is out of all the people able men. So, it's not a chauvinistic comment, but one that refers to a person capable of leading by example in a physical side of, or in the physical side of study, prayer, and worship. If you have a male concept, you have what goes with that male concept, which is the physical aspects of hands-on. Okay? So the person must be hands-on in their involvement with the kahila. Okay? There are those who reverence Elohim, truth, and hate unjust gain. Okay? They're not in it to swindle anybody. They're in it because they have a heart for the people in that kahila. They have a heart for the people in that congregation, in that community. They reverence Elohim. Okay? They believe that Elohim can and will provide manifestation. So they have to be people, not men or women, people, either or, that are people of great connection, relationship with their Elohim. And we use it in modern Greco-Roman terms, they have to be people of prayer. Okay? In this way, they're able to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, rulers of 10. Okay, so he breaks it down into small groups because it's easier to take care of small groups. And but the word used for rulers is sari, that means princes, but also refers to someone who has dominion, mastery over something. In this case, dominion or mastery over what? Dominion and mastery over the people Okay? That makes this person a master, and the people of the Kehillah become slaves. What does he have to have dominion, or she have to have dominion and mastery over? It tells us. We have 1,000. We have the Aleph. They have to have a mastery, a dominion or a mastery, which is a solid grasp on their relationship with Yahuwah their Elohim. Dominion over 100, Kof. Someone who is set apart and dedicated in their relationship with Yahuwah Elohim and their dedication to the people of the Kehillah. 50, Nun. Someone who has a firm grasp on their life and spiritual well-being, guarding what is written on his or her soul. What does that mean? This is not the kind of person that is intentionally going out of their way to write garbage on the disk drive of the laptop computer that they are. They try to write good things into their soul by acting in the way, in the manner consistent with the instruction of Elohim. And then 10, someone who knows the difference between their own strength and ability and that of Yahuwah Elohim. Someone who realizes that I really can't do all things through me who strengthens me. I do all things through the anointing of Yahuwah that gives me strength. And therefore my relationship on my Elohim becomes the most important thing in my ability to guide, lead, direct, teach, or otherwise anything else to the Kehillah. It's not simply the role of the pastor, and this is something very important, or the rabbi, okay? Because that can lead to problems. We'll get into that in just a second. Okay? Who are the Yitros of the Kehillah? So let's consider what Paul has to say to the Corinthians first. 1 Corinthians 12:28. And Yahuwah has set some in the Kehillah, first apostles, secondary prophets, thirdly teachers. After that, miracles, then gifts of healing, helps, governments, and diversities of tongues. Okay? Let's take a look at that. There are builders of the congregations, okay? Apostles, people who plant them. They're not there to hang out. They plant them. Then they find the people within that congregation who can maintain roles, and then those people come in and maintain their roles. Those who have a special message from Elohim, okay, we call them prophets, but there's Nebi'im. Nebi'im is a human messenger of Elohim, someone who has a special connection, who can lead and guide by giving a word of something that they receive from Elohim. Those who teach, those who care for and minister to the sick, those who help out in the physical and financial things, those who are administrators, making sure the bills get paid. And there are those with unique insights that can only come from a deep personal relationship with Yahuwah. Okay? We have to understand diversities of tongues is more than, screaming out, oh, basenda, basenda, basenda me money. Diversities of tongues is understanding the multiplicity of points of views within a congregation and being able to discern and offer advice, not necessarily within the congregation, but to offer advice to the person who has to deal with it. This type of person is the person that gives advice to the pastor, gives advice to the teachers, gives advice to the evangelist, gives advice to anyone, because they understand the points of view of other people. Okay? So, the builders of the congregation, people who help out, people who administer. Note that pastors are not included in this list. It's because these Yitros serve to help the pastor rabbi so that he does not waste away. You have one person that's trying to do it all, that person's going to burn out. Okay? So let's consider another point of view besides that of Yitro's advice to Moses at Ephesians 4:11 and 12. And he gave some apostles, and some prophets, and some evangelists, and some pastors, some shepherds, and some teachers, for the perfecting of the Kehillah, for the work of the ministry, for the edifying of the body of Mashiach. Why do we have all these components? Why do we have this multitude of Yitro personalities? Consider that. What we have to take away from this is that every one of us within the Kehillah have a special gift, and as such, a very important contribution to make a Kehillah. A congregation is not about the pastor or the rabbi. It's about sharing our lives and talents with each other with the anointing of Yahuwah, the body of Mashiach. Paul also tells us that not everyone can be the head or the heart. We have to understand that without the big toe, the body cannot keep its balance very well. Without the use of the thumb, it cannot securely grasp what the head and the heart need to think and live. It makes it hard to hold on to things without that little digit. In a Jewish congregation, every individual, man and woman, is capable of making aliyah to read the Torah. They call it aliyah. You walk up to the bima and you take your turn reading the Torah. All right? At 12 and 13, girls and boys are given the opportunity to lead a Torah service and to teach the parsha at their bat or bar mitzvah. So the purpose of that, they become an adult within the Kehillah. Every adult within a Jewish congregation has to be capable of leading the congregation. The rabbi is not anything special. He's just someone who's gone through a whole lot of schooling to be able to teach a unique insight maybe on the Torah. But everyone, starting at the age of 12 for girls and 13 for boys, learn how to minister to the congregation in a Torah service. At 16, they're able to lead the service. The confirmation takes place. They become members of the community. It's a very long service. We went to my son Seth's confirmation. It was a Torah service. Torah service generally lasts 2 to 3 to 4 hours, depending on where you go. That's why they have a very extensive Kaddish afterwards. Sometimes they have big long buffet lines, and you go and they feed you a full spread, because most people are going to starve to death by the time the cantor's done bumping their gums and the rabbi actually gets to talk. Okay? Okay. So the rabbi is there too, as Scripture says in verse 22 of Yitro, to make determinations that are beyond the scope of the other ministries. And let them judge the people at all season, and it shall be that every great matter they bring unto you, every small matter they shall judge themselves. So they make it easier for you to bear the burden with you. So there are a lot of helps within the congregation that are there to serve, to help the shepherd, the pastor, the rabbi, someone who is in that position. Okay? That there were so many Yitro personalities within the Kehillah allows it to avoid the corruption of, and this is what the whole point is, guru worship. There are a lot of people who will not listen to anything that anyone else has to say, because only their pastor can be right. Okay? I will tell you right now, I am not always going to be right. Okay? Your responsibility, is hopefully to either prove me right or prove me wrong. And in proving me wrong, remember, I'm not up here and you're not down here. We are like this, and you come to me and say, dude, what were you thinking? Okay? Little South African lady over there has absolutely no problems straightening it out. Okay? But that's what it is. We have to have the components the full components of the kahila to avoid this guru worship while allowing the kahila to thrive at its highest possible ability. So with that, we can say grooviness has been achieved. Yeah. And then